Richaun Holmes and Tristan Vukcevic kick off the Washington Wizards free agency period, but could more moves be on the horizon? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? I hope everybody had a blessed weekend. I appreciate you guys making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every single day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So, all right, everybody. Richaun Holmes and Tristan Vukcevic, news surrounding them have kicked off the Washington Wizards free agency period, but are there other moves on the horizon? Lots of excitement right now, especially after the draft, but now the free agency starts, and let's start with Richaun Holmes. Now, Richaun Holmes, let's see, he was sent to the Washington Wizards, obviously at the trade deadline in exchange for Daniel Gafford and draft compensation, but he has officially declined his $12.8 million player option, and he to stay and sign a 2-year, $25.9 million deal to remain with the Washington Wizards. So before you react, hold on now. All right, so it is a unique deal for Holmes because it slightly lowers his cap hit to 12.6 as opposed to 12.9 for the 2024-2025 season. And it's only guaranteeing $250,000 of the $13.13 million that he can earn during this season, or during next season. I'm sorry, during the 2026 season. So if he plays well for the Wizards, or is he deemed a valuable veteran to help develop their top pick, Alex Sarr, he could make a good chunk of the change in 2025 and 2026 season. But a lot of that depends on what his impact is on the Washington Wizards. So let's dig into that real quick. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Let's look at every perspective in this deal. Now, I fully thought that he was going to enact his player option because myself and a lot of people in the NBA community did not believe that he was going to garner that amount of money in the free agent period. Reasons for that, I mean, looking at his stat, not really stat line, but his looking at his makeup as a player. At this stage in his career, offensively, very limited. Not a guy who's going to stretch the floor. But if you look at areas like rebounding, having that dog factor, and a guy who's got high motor, those are areas that really help the Wizards in the second half of the season. So he has value. Not only, he does have value to the Wizards. Now, do I still believe that he could have got that on the open market? I don't think so. But looking at Richaun Holmes, I definitely think he could be an asset to the Washington Wizards. Because again, yes, as that center position, very limited. But here's the thing: we got Alex Sarr now. Now, if Kyle Kuzma's moved before the season starts, you're probably looking at Alex Sarr being the starting center, which I think a lot of us have no problem with that, right? At 7'1", 220 pounds, he's a guy who can definitely hold his weight, in my opinion, at the center position. Now he's going to have his fair share of trials and tribulations. He's going to have growing pains. He's a rookie. He's coming over from an overseas league, so there's going to be a period of him acclimating to the speed of the NBA. But I think Alex Sarr, man, obviously this fan base is very excited with this draft, and you very well should be because this is a very good draft. And there's a lot of moving pieces. I said this from the get-go. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces. And, Denny Avdia was traded to Portland, so that was one major deal. That was a really highly contested deal, but it was a deal that, and to a certain degree, was necessary for both sides to a certain degree, right? Was I happy? No, but we can move past that. Looking at Richaun Holmes, the deal, I was a little surprised, to be honest with you, because signing him to a 2-year extension, and I get it, a lot of it is contingent on how he plays. But on the flip side, if you look at roster construction, I mean, you have Tristan Vukcevic, who we're about to talk about in a couple minutes, but we have him, Marvin Bagley III, so Richaun Holmes now, and Alex Sarr. And like I said, if Kyle Kuzma is still on the team before the season starts, which all arrows are pointing towards that. If you remember the Mexico City poster, it showed Kuz, it didn't show Denny, right? It showed Kuz. So I think Kuz is definitely going to be on the opening day roster for game 1 of the regular season. So you're pretty much looking at Alex Sarr being the starting center. Now, eventually he'll probably move to the 4 and allow for another 7-footer, or wherever they put it at the 5. But I think that for right now, Alex Sarr is going to be your starting center. So Richaun Holmes, could he be a veteran factor for Alex Sarr? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think he'd definitely be a guy who's been around the block. He's played in the NBA for a while. He knows the insides and outsides. He knows the intricacies of playing in the NBA, and I think he'll be a really good factor for Alex Sarr, just like I felt with Malcolm Brogdon and Johnny Davis. We'll see if Johnny Davis is still on the team before the season starts. But, these veteran moves do carry value as far as leadership. Guys are going to come in and really work with these young guys and get them ready for hopefully a long career in the NBA. So I do think that these are leadership moves. I think these are really good moves because, again, if he plays up to snuff, he's going to be able to earn his salary. And yeah, I get it. The first chance, the salary, but we're going to year 2 of a rebuild. So his salary is not going to make or break this team. Just like Kyle Kuzma's contract is not going to make or break this team. Just like Jordan Poole's contract is not going to make or break this team because we're in the rebuild. And right now, salary, especially salary for players that are for players that are considered to be part of the future, it varies right now. So there's a lot of moving pieces still. So looking at Richaun Holmes, I get it. At first, I was like, man, he declined his option. I felt like he declined his option at first because he kind of started writing on the wall. Alex Sarr, 7'1", he's probably going to be the starting center. We got Marvin Bagley III, who probably could be back. He's probably going to be back up at this point. And you have Tristan Vukcevic, who, again, we're going to talk about him, but it's kind of in the gray area with him also. But so I was surprised, and you're still going to see Alex Sarr start. Maybe there's a battle in training camp between Marvin Bagley III and Richaun Holmes to be the backup. But I think that just for the sake of roster construction, the only reason I was a little leery about it is because what do you do as far as playing time, especially for Tristan Vukcevic? He needs playing time. At what point do we start the youth movement? Acquiring veteran talent. I think that, on one hand, at first glance, you kind of wondering, like, what are we doing? Like, why are we retaining veteran talent just to try to flip him at a later point? But looking at the deal is not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal. If he doesn't pan out, it's not fully guaranteed. And he's definitely had the veteran factor. So I think that could you boost him enough to get, either get assets back at the deadline or maybe include him in the deal? Absolutely. I think that, if you look at a lot of veterans on this team, between him, Malcolm Brogdon, definitely Kyle Kuzma. We're going to talk about Tyus Jones, but, a lot of these vets, Will Dawkins is being crafty. And I get it at first, like, we need to start the youth movement. But when you kind of take the time to think about it, it's craftiness. If you look at Oklahoma City, which, obviously Will Dawkins came from Oklahoma City, obviously the DNA, the blueprint, everything is about Oklahoma City and emulating what they're doing. And if you saw them, they picked up bad contracts for picks. They picked up veteran leadership to be flipped. Sam Presti over there at Oklahoma City did a good job of not only utilizing draft picks, accumulating draft picks, picking up young assets, but yes, he would pick up veterans, and he would pick up veterans on very friendly deals, and he would flip them. And so I think this is not a bad deal. Again, it's not fully guaranteed if he doesn't pan out. And if he does, his contract's not going to break the bank. So that's kind of why I'm looking at it. It's not a bad deal. It just depends on roster construction. And I think that the organization at this point, they're going to start Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is the guy going forward. I mean, he's the franchise cornerstone between him and Bilal Coulibaly, and he's going to start. I don't see any scenario where, Richaun Holmes, Marvin Bagley III, or Tristan Vukcevic could potentially start with Alex Sarr. He's going to be your starter. Now, if there's a move for Kyle Kuzma, you could see Alex Sarr go to the 4, and maybe you see, and then it becomes a little clearer at that point. But still, I think if it's between Marvin Bagley III and Richaun Holmes, I think Marvin Bagley III, because his versatility and his ability to shoot the 3-point shot and the mid-range shot, gives him the edge to be that starter at the 5 over Richaun Holmes. If indeed Alex Sarr moves to the 4, if we move Kyle Kuzma at some point before the season, which I don't, it could be a chance because a lot of us didn't know for sure that they were going to move him from Denny, even though, we all knew that the only untouchable player on the roster before the draft was Bilal Coulibaly. So there was still some surprise. Whew, been a long weekend. Let me get it out. There was still some surprise with the Denny move, but not so in hindsight, because I think we all knew that if the move was right, they were going to make that move. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of the veterans on the roster, if not the young guys. Last video, in my mistake, I didn't mention Corey Kispert as a possible guy who could be moved. And as soon as I hit the click to end the video, I was like, oh man, brother, you didn't even talk about Corey Kispert. So Corey Kispert is another guy that is definitely a tradable commodity, in my opinion. So there's going to be a lot of moving pieces this season because Will Dawkins is putting his stamp on this front office. And he's doing that by making Bilal Coulibaly one of his cornerstones. Alex Sarr is definitely these two are definitely the tandem that the Wizards are definitely building around, and I think they should. I mean, I like the tandem. Like I said, it was tough to see didn't go, but like I said, you got to look forward, and the possibilities are you're going to see a lot of guys. There's going to be a high turnover rate from his roster from last year, in my opinion, because a lot of these vets are going to be on their way out. The one guy who's kind of on the wings, who could go, who could not go, is Kyle Kuzma, in my opinion. But again, if the price is right, they're going to make that move. So looking at Richaun Holmes, like I said, looking at his contract, not a bad contract, because if he doesn't pan out, it's not fully guaranteed. And even if he stays on the team through his contract for the next 2 years, his salary is not going to make or break this roster, because we're going to be in the middle of a rebuild. We're going into year 2. The last year of his deal is going to be year 3. And yes, we're probably going to see a lot better results from the young guys, but we're not going to be at the point where we're going to be ready to contend at that point. So not breaking the bank. So where do I grade this deal? Because I'm going to start grading deals, trades, and stuff like that, just like I did the draft. I'm going to grade it a B+. Like I said, it's a veteran move. It's a leadership move. Just for the sake of depth at the center position, there's a lot of moves need to be made, because right now you have 4 guys, possibly 3 if Kyle Kuzma is moved, because we all know that Alex R wants to play the power forward position. And so there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of moving pieces, but I'm going to say a B+ is not a bad move. The contract is definitely team friendly. If he doesn't pan out, a lot of it's not guaranteed. If he does pan out, he could be good for Alex R, just like I think Malcolm Brogdon could be good for Johnny Davis if they choose to retain Johnny Davis, and if Malcolm Brogdon is not moved before the season. So we're going to get into Tristan Vukcevic. But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like they want them to. Whoa. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily, every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports partner of the Major League Baseball, not the Major League Baseball, but I'm a baseball fan, so it is the Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch today to Locked On Sports today. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, y'all. All right, let's get into Tristan Vukcevic. Now, there's some news with him. The Wizards have declined the $2.4 million team option on center Tristan Vukcevic. League sources tells Hoops Hype. So shout out to Hoops Hype. If you don't follow him, definitely follow him. Great news surrounding the Wizards. Great content. He says Washington is prioritizing flexibility ahead of free agency and possible trades. Vukcevic, drafted with the 42nd pick in the second round in 2023, averaged 8.5 points in 15 minutes per game last season. So what do I like and what do I not like, and where do we go from here? I was surprised to a certain degree. I knew that with this being year 2 of a 2-year contract, because he was a second round pick, this was definitely a season for Tristan Vukcevic where he would have to kind of prove it. But looking at his age and the fact that in a small sample size, he has performed very well for a very young Wizards team, I knew that the likelihood of him being signed to a long-term deal is very likely, and I feel that way now. I think, yes, they declined his option, and I think that, just like the report says, the Wizards are looking at flexibility. There's a lot of moves that are going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty, because we're going to talk about Tyus Jones in a little bit, because he's a really likely candidate for a sign and trade. Kyle Kuzma has value and has interest from other teams. Corey Kispert has interest from other teams. If you look at Landry Shamet, interest from other teams. So, like I said before, and I said it a few times going into the offseason, that there's going to be a high turnover rate. They want to go younger. And again, Will Dawkins wants to put his stamp on the franchise. And I get it. If I was Will Dawkins, I would have done the same. Not every move is going to be popular. Obviously, the Denny move, very unpopular, looking at his age and the fact that he was homegrown. But I think that to a certain degree, every new GM comes in and does that. So it's not new with Will Dawkins. Every GM comes in and does that, and they put their own stamp on the front office, and they prioritize their own guys. Obviously, Bilal Coulibaly was Will Dawkins' first round pick. And looking at his skill set, the timeline of his development, he's the guy. Him and Alex Sarr are guys that when they develop, when they figure out the offensive games, man, I'm telling you, man, they are going to be special in my opinion. I like both of them. So yeah, not every move made by organizations is going to be popular. You're probably going to hear about the Denny deal probably for the next week or so because it wasn't popular. But I think a lot of people like myself understand it. I definitely understand the move. So looking at Tristan Vukcevic, I think they're going to end up working out a long-term deal. Now I think that they're going to wait till a lot of the dust is settled and make the moves, make the trades, and I think he's going to be one of the last people. But that's okay because he's not going to garner too much contract. And I think that they're definitely going to sign him to a long-term deal because he is young and he can play. He can flat out play. So I think eventually they will work out a long-term deal. So I'm not alarmed, guys. I'm not too upset at all. At first, before I scrolled down, I was like, because I was hanging out with my guy, the real Ed Oliver, on Saturday, man. So I read the report and I like the decline is option. But then I understand because it was a 2-year deal and they want more flexibility, not only for this offseason, but for long-term flexibility as far as what moves they can make. And I think that's refreshing, man. Like I said, I continue to be a big fan of the Will Dawkins and Michael Winger and Travis Schlenk, but primarily Will Dawkins because being GM, he's the MC on the stage, right? He's the face, man. So Will Dawkins has done all the right things, and it's not easy, man. It's not easy. You're gonna make people upset along the way. Obviously a lot of people upset about Denny, but not everybody's gonna be happy. But he's making the necessary moves to make this team not only younger, faster, more versatile, but as far as salary, he's making this team a lot more flexible going into the future. Because looking ahead in 3 to 4 years, when we make that move into contention, in my opinion, hopefully, in 3 to 4 years, draft picks and cap flexibility are very, very important because to add that one guy, that 1 to 2 pieces to add to a team when you want to make that playoff push, you got to have flexibility with the cap, man. Especially when it comes to adding outside talent to your core because you want to re-sign your core first. And you got to make the priorities right now. The priorities are potentially, Bilal Coulibaly and Alex are the priorities right now as far as down the road and re-signing them 2 deals. And you got to have the cap flexibility. So I like the move. I do like the move. And I think that eventually they're going to work out a deal. So I wouldn't get too upset, guys. I think that they're definitely going to work out a long-term deal. I think it's definitely going to be something that's going to wait towards the end of free agency, in my opinion. But they're going to work out a deal. All right, so guys, before we roll out the night, some other moves to look at. Again, this is a report from Hoops Hype. So again, if you do not follow Hoops Hype, you got to because when it comes to Wizards content, they're money, man. Outside of Shams Charania and Wojnarowski out of ESPN, Hoops Hype's on it, man. He is on it. So he says that the Wizards possibly moving Tyus Jones via sign and trade is picking up steam. Jones has consistently been one of the NBA's most efficient playmakers in assist to turnover ratio. So looking at that, I knew that, Tyus Jones has value. And the fact that if you look at his elite numbers at turnover to assist ratio, he could be a really good starting point guard. Now, could he be a good point guard here in DC? Absolutely. But I think that the writing was on the wall. Jordan Poole, for the sake of trade value, for the sake of just evaluating him as a young player and his fit with pieces like Bilal Coulibaly, Alex R, Bob Carrington, they're evaluating for the next 3 years, to see if he can be the long-term piece. But looking at his contract and his age, now he still fits the timeline. But right now, what I'm saying is Jordan, all arrows are pointing towards Jordan Poole being the guy at point guard. So I think that a sign and trade is definitely good for the Wizards because you're getting value for Tyus Jones. Because there was a chance that he was going to walk for free. But now they can get the value for him. So I think it's a good move. Like I said, you definitely try to get a sign and trade. You definitely try to get value for Tyus because you don't want to see him walk away for nothing. Because another trade that was kind of unpopular was the KP trade. Not because moving on from KP, even though he was very popular in DC, and I was a big fan of KP. But we knew that injury history was a factor, and he didn't fit the timeline. Obviously, if you trade Bill, you got to trade KP. And Kuzma was brought in as a team-friendly guy who could provide leadership and be attractable, to other teams who want to add a scoring piece and don't want to break the bank to do so. So, looking at that, I think that you have to get value for Tyus Jones, in my opinion, because you don't want to see him walk away for nothing. Because if he does, the KP trade looks bad. But like I said, I think Will Dawkins gonna get it done. Like I said, so moving forward real quick, guys. This comes from Jake Fisher at Yahoo Sports, and it says quote unquote, in addition to the Lakers' expected interest in Jonas Valanciunas, the veteran center is believed to have another suitor in the Washington Wizards, league sources tell Yahoo Sports. So I'm gonna keep this real short. Maybe I wouldn't mind, but we have a lot of moves need to unfold, and we've been linked to a lot of centers so far. I mean, it was Mitchell Robinson we were linked to. Josh Giddey, the guard / forward out of Oklahoma City. So because we're a team who is early on in the rebuild, we're going to be linked to a lot of bad contracts. Not that I'm calling Jonas Valanciunas a bad contract, but if you saw the recent move for the Pelicans in acquiring DeJounte Murray, they're looking to make some salary cap moves too. So you could definitely see the Wizards looking to add, especially within this offseason, the next offseason, and maybe the one after that. But I think there's going to be a different situation at that point. But you're going to see Will Dawkins and the company definitely add bad contracts to attain picks. Because why are picks important? Because picks are not only important for acquiring young talent for the Washington Wizards going forward, but again, they're very important for us using this leverage and trade talks to acquire top-end talent to add to the roster when we want to make that move for a playoff run or a championship run in the future. So, acquiring all the picks he can, I think is definitely a good move for Will Dawkins. So, looking at Jonas Valanciunas, I think the biggest thing, and I think everybody's kind of has this right now, is fit. Where's he fit long term? And because we have a log jam right now at center. Oh, let me go ahead and switch to the side piece. There you go. So on the side piece, you see Richaun Holmes and Tristan Vukcevic. That's my bad. But getting back to it, I would entertain it, but there's a lot of moves that need to happen. Obviously, you still have Marvin Bagley third on the roster. Tristan Vukcevic, chances are they're going to re-sign him. Alex Sarr, right now he's a 5. Later on, he's going to be a 4. You got Richaun Holmes. So where does he fit long term? So like I said, I wouldn't put too much into Jonas Valanciunas right now because it's just a report. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of players that are going to be connected to the Wizards because this is a team that's looking to pick up veteran contracts or bad contracts that in exchange for picks. And you're seeing a lot of that in the NBA now. That's why I did, a video on Tim Hardaway Jr. He was a guy that, picks were connected to him. The list goes on. So I think that I don't think there's a likelihood of it being Jonas Valanciunas coming to DC, but I think that he's going to be the one of many examples of bad contracts or veteran contracts that other teams are looking to unload to attach to a first round pick. They're going to be very, very attractive to the Washington Wizards, man. So, like I said, if he comes with a first round pick or more, you definitely entertain that. But, looking at roster fit and priority here, developing young talent has to be a priority in DC. And I get having veterans on the roster. I get that. I get having veteran leadership, but to a certain degree, you have to allot minutes and you have to prioritize allotting minutes to the young guys because you best believe the season coming up, you want to see major minutes for Bilal, major minutes, especially after, playing with Team France. He's going to be playing against top end talent, in my opinion, in the Olympics. So he's going to get really good. I guess a couple things to look at. Bilal's going to get really good experience and really good exposure because, when you think of French players right now, Wembanyama is your guy. Now, obviously, the guys in the draft this year, Risa Shea, Sarr, Salon, they're going to eventually get their names out of it. But as far as French players, right now, you're thinking of, outside of the established veterans who are of a French origin, they're thinking of Wembanyama. And right now, Bilal is starting to slowly become, another French face as far as a face of the NBA. And it's exciting times for, not only the NBA, because the NBA, real quick, guys, what I love about the NBA is that the diversity of it. You have a more international reach, not so much of soccer or football, but more so than the NFL and in Major League Baseball, because every corner in the globe you have top end talent, in my opinion, and it's refreshing to see that. So right now it's France's time. You had a time with players from the Balkans, whether it's Serbia, whether it's any country in the Balkans. You had in the Middle East has had its times with talent, obviously with Deni Avdia and other players coming out of Middle Eastern countries. Obviously European players have been a hallmark for the last 20 years in the NBA. But right now, France is that European country where they're putting a lot of talent in the NBA. So right now, the Olympics are good for a player like Bilal Coulibaly because it gives him that exposure, which I think that for the Wizards to be that team that people want to come play, if DC wants to be that city that people want to come play, giving these young guys exposure is definitely a really good thing. So give Bilal all the exposure you can in the Olympics, especially, and I think it's going to be good for the kid, man, because he's the piece. The keys have officially been handed to him. So, again, looking at Jonas Valanciunas kind of ending this whole conversation is that they're going to look to acquire young, or not young, but veteran contracts and bad contracts to get draft picks. And I think that's the best strategy right now. So again, everybody, a lot to unfold today. I hope everybody had a blessed and safe weekend. I hope everybody drink responsibly. I had fun this weekend, man. I was actually in Baltimore with my guy, Amanda Oliver, at the Big Three. The league that's hosted by Ice Cube, man. I had a good time. I got to see Ice Cube there, got Carmelo Anthony, among a lot of not only former NBA players, but former Wizards. So it was really cool to hang out with my guy, number one. But number two, it was cool, man, because saw a lot of players I grew up watching. So I hope everybody had a good weekend. A lot to unfold. Free agency has started. So the Wizards, again, in summary, have retained Richaun Holmes, have declined Tristan Vukcevic, but it appears that they will resign him to a long-term deal. And there's interest in Tyus Jones for a sign and trade, and Jonas Valanciunas is linked to the Washington Wizards. So we're early on in the process. Free agency did start today, and people aren't official to July 6th. So right now is the legal tampering period, but a lot of moves for Wizards. Going to be a lot of moving pieces. Going to be a lot of dominoes to fall, and there's going to be a lot of turnover. So put your seatbelts on and get ready to ride, man, because it's going to be a very, very interesting season, or off season that is, for the Washington Wizards. So again, I appreciate you guys. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the Free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the Free Fire TV channels app. All right, everybody. Everybody have a good evening. I will see you guys tomorrow night. Hail to the Wizards and peace.